And now, the lady I suspect many of our listeners have been waiting to hear talk about Outlaws of Love, Dr. Philippa Semper, avid reader since the age of 3 and captivated by music for as long as she can remember. She took her PhD in medieval manuscript research at the University of Exeter and taught English for several years at University College Dublin before moving to the University of Birmingham, where she lectures in medieval English literature and modern fantasy writing, and publishes in both areas. Philippa became interested in the relationship between modern song lyrics and literary texts when she found herself writing about a U2 lyric in one of her finals examinations, and she has since used modern songs to teach students how to approach medieval lyrics. She discovered Adam Lambert by way of the rock band Muse through the song Soaked, which Muse provided for his debut album. She has been fascinated by both Adam's lyrics and his music ever since. I thought it might be a good idea to listen to the song once again so it's fresh in our minds when you tell us more about the lyrics.
Nights are getting colder, colder. Hey, tears all fall the same. We all feel the rain. We can't change. Everywhere we go, we're looking for the sun. Nowhere to Outlaws of love. Scars make us who we are. Hearts and homes are broken, broken. Far we could go so far with our minds wide open. Open, hey, tears all fall the same. We all feel the rain. We can't change. Everywhere we go, we're looking for the sun. Nowhere to grow old. We're always on the run. They say we're riding hell, but I don't think we will. They've branded us enough, outlaws of love. Everywhere we go,
it's lovely to have you back on the sound bath. So welcome, Philippa. I can't wait to hear what you've got to say about Outlaws of Love. And it'd be wonderful if you could, first of all, read it for us again, please.
Of course. Oh, nowhere left to go. Are we getting closer? Closer? No. All we know is no. Nights are getting colder, colder. Hey, 'tis all full the same. We all feel the rain. We can't change. Everywhere we go, we're looking for the sun. Nowhere to grow old. We're always on the run. They say we'll rot in hell. Well, I don't think we will. They've branded us enough. Outlaws of love. Scars make us who we are. Hearts and homes are broken, broken. Far, we could go so far with our minds wide open, open. Hey, 'tis all full the same. We all feel the rain. We can't change. Everywhere we go, we're looking for the sun. Nowhere to grow old. We're always on the run. They say we'll rot in hell. Well, I don't think we will. They've branded us enough, outlaws of love. Everywhere we go, we're looking for the sun. Nowhere to grow old. We're always on the run. They say we'll rot in hell. Well, I don't think we will. They've branded us enough, outlaws of love.
That was amazing. Thank you so much. Oh, it really is very, very moving. And okay.
It's such a sad song. It really is a heartbreaking song.
Yes. Right. So what did you make of it?
As a song in lyric terms, it's quite simple. Gets its emotional power, I think, from being so simple, such a straightforward lyric. It's got only the two small verses, 4 short lines each,
Right.
and then the rest is this large repeated chorus bit. It doesn't have a bridge at all, so we've literally got these 2 short verses and then the big choruses. I think it's really interesting to look at this song in relation to Adam's previous work. If you look at this in relation to Broken Open, you can see what he's doing with rhyme. He really likes quite complex rhymes and keeping rhyming on words that have significance. So in the first verse, you get no and go in the first line, and then no, no, no in the third line, and so you've got these constant no, go, no, no, no. So you've got the emphasised negative coming through this verse very strongly. And then he's using assonance again a lot as well to rhyme closer with colder. Getting closer, getting colder.
Right.
Which is the opposite of what you expect that rhyme to be. You expect getting closer to be getting warmer.
Right, yes.
That's the natural thing. I don't know if that game is the same in the States actually, as we play here. But our childhood games are always about when you're playing Blind Man's Buff.
Right.
Did you ever play that game?
Yes, I know what you mean. Yeah.
When you're getting warmer and getting closer to something.
Right. Yes.
You expect a getting closer rhyme to be paired with a getting warmer rhyme, but here it's getting colder.
Right.
So you have this tremendously poignant first line which gives you oh no go. Then you get a question, are we getting closer? And then you get the negatives again, no, 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 and your nights are getting colder. It's really desperately sad.
Yes.
Moving into the chorus, that middle statement, tears all fall the same, we all feel the rain, we can't change, I think is quite unexpected in a way as a statement. For those of us who are used to thinking of Adam's songwriting as a very positive kind of milieu, it's quite difficult to see him writing "We Can't Change." But that's coming out of a very specific context, which is that we are the same, we have particular feelings, and we can't change the way that we feel.
Right.
Our emotions and our attractions and our experience of the world are hardwired into who we are.
Right.
And it's not that we can't change our circumstances, but we can't not weep. We can't not feel rain when it falls, and we can't not feel the kinds of attractions and emotions that we do feel.
Right.
So although it's part of a very sad song, it's not a line that says nothing can change in the world ever. It's the line that's putting the context around it that we are human beings who have particular kinds of responses to the world.
Yes.
In the chorus, he picks up again on the nowhere of the very first line. In the chorus, you get everywhere and nowhere.
Right.
So you're back in this idea of place. Where are we? Whereabouts in the world can we be? Is there a space for us?
Right.
Is there a place? He picks up the go again from the first line of the first verse. But everywhere we go now, we're looking for the sun. The sun is your natural place to go after you've had "We'll Feel the Rain." So you've got the experience of feeling the rain, wanting the sun.
Right.
Trying to get out of the more painful experiences of the world into something that's warm and not cold, that's day and not night, that picks up and changes all of those things that he's been talking about in the previous 7 lines. Specifically having nowhere to grow old, I think is quite a modern sort of preoccupation. I'm not sure that people in former days worried about where they would grow old. I think there was an assumption perhaps that if you had children, the children would look after you, and perhaps in a time when lifespans weren't as long as they are now, you didn't expect to have such a long period of growing old.
Right.
But these days, we expect to have a much longer period of being old, and of course the poignancy for a same-sex couple who are in a hostile environment might be that they don't get to have children who could look after them anyway.
Right.
So the idea of growing old is kind of stripped of the idea of being rooted in a place, having a family, having people around you, having people who will take care of you when you are no longer able to do that. So having nowhere to grow old is I think it's a very modern emotional problem, but it's also something that's very, very specifically linked to that idea of wanting to have a family, but perhaps having that denied. They say we'll rot in hell. Well, I don't think we will. They've branded us enough. Again, he loves assonance and midline rhymes. We'll, hell, well, will. Along that long line. They say we'll rot in hell. Well, I don't think we will. It's lovely, sound-wise. It's a beautiful line to write. I'd love to write a line like that. But it takes you from wheel and hell to this reversal, well, will.
Right.
And that reflects what the line says. They say one thing, I don't think it's going to happen.
Right.
Obviously they say we'll rot in hell is the first real marker you get of what the song is all about. Up to this point, it could have been anybody on the run.
Right.
But they say we'll rot in hell gives you this very specific marker that this is, as he himself said when he introduced the song, this is about being gay and feeling that you don't have anywhere that you can be, that you're always running and that you're being judged. And, we'll rot in hell. This is very much a reaction to the kind of prejudice and the kinds of hatred that have been directed against him and against many, many other gay people.
Right.
I don't think we will. They've branded us enough. It's a response to that, and it says, well, you've done your best, really, to make that hell for us on earth.
Yeah.
You've done enough. You've made us different enough. You've made our lives miserable enough. You've made us outlaws of love. So there's an awful lot going on, even in those few lines. Even in that last bit, he still has a rhyme, enough, love, a close enough rhyme. So it's like Broken Open in that it's really connected together very closely and very well by assonance and by rhyme and by these lovely sets of sounds that carry you through the lines. That seems to work really effectively with simplicity and gentleness of the melody that actually goes with this song as well.
Right.
Second little verse is the only bit that's different in the rest of the song. And this is a more positive verse. Scars make us who we are is a kind of claim of identity. That even if you're hurt, that's part of your experience. That's part of what makes you an individual and helps you to learn from life. But it's also sad in that if somebody's scarred, they have gone through this misery and this hurt. Hearts and homes are broken. Broken hearts and broken homes, I think, is one of the most fierce pairings you can have. A broken heart is something that everybody thinks they're familiar with, but I think that real agony of losing somebody that you love deeply is something that it's not easy to talk about. And broken homes, home is supposed to be the place where you're safe and you're looked after and you don't have to run, but if your home is broken, there's nothing you can do about it. You can't find a safe place.
Right.
Again, he's still using the rhymes here. In the first line, scars are. So very strong link there between the scars and the identity. In the second line, homes and broken have assonance. So they're kind of connected as well. And again, it's like the first verse. You don't expect these pairings to be made, these connections to be made. So it jars, and it makes the sadness of it actually reflect the line, that the line feels broken as well. And then this extraordinarily wistful couple of lines, far, we could go so far with our minds wide open. And here he's rhyming far with far, but also in the middle of that line he rhymes go and so. Not far, we could go so far. Which is, again, it's a beautiful drawing out of this line. So you get these long vowel sounds taking you through. But you've also got another rhyme to balance the fact that far is bracketing the line at both ends, and there's not a different rhyme there. Then with our minds wide open, and again, minds and wide. It's not quite a rhyme, but there's enough assonance there for you to be able to feel that these words are connected. And the idea that you could go wherever you wanted, not because you could physically move, but because your mind was open.
Right.
You would have no boundaries on what you could think, and therefore the whole world would be open to you. Wherever you wanted to, you could go.
That's a wonderful thought.
It's a lovely thought, because it also reverses the negativity of going that you had in the first verse.
Right.
The idea of going because you have to, and because there's nowhere left to go, and all the sort of horrendousness of being on the run.
Right.
This is the flip side of that, the idea of being able to go because you wanted to, because everything could be something big and beautiful and wonderful to explore.
Right.
So this perhaps is a true Adam song in that it isn't misery throughout. There is this line of wistful positivity that just think what might be.
Right.
Even in this horrible situation, even when something's so very sad, there is the possibility that there would be this other way to be. And from that, he then moves back into the big chorus section. First of all, about the fact that we experience tears and rain, we can't change that. And then looking for the sun, or being on the run again, and being outlaws of love. So that's a repetition of what he was doing before. So that's how I think the song is actually working.
Right.
It's really interesting to watch him developing as a songwriter, and to see particularly what he does with rhyme and assonance
Yes.
I suppose perhaps it's a real musician's writing in that he has this extraordinary ear for the flow of a line and also for keeping the rhymes going and moving a line onto the next in that way.
Right. I'm so pleased you said that it's a musician's writing, because so many people feel that Adam is not a musician because he's a singer only. And I just get so annoyed because, of course, he is a musician. The voice is an instrument, and he is so musical.
Yes, I think his musicality is very much a part of his writing. I mean, it's obviously part of his singing as well.
Right.
I mean, it's part of being able to express himself so beautifully, not just in the sound, but in the performance.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that ear for the way things sound is very, very clear in the way that he writes.
Yes.
There are lots of songwriters who write for the content,
right.
but it's not very often that you can go through and find these kinds of rhythms being built up through the sounds of the words.
Right.
I've tried doing this before. I teach students to analyse poems sometimes through looking at modern song lyrics.
Right.
And is a very small group of writers who can do this and who have this ear for it. And most of the others write for emotional content, but not for this kind of, for this lovely mellifluous sound on the air,
Yes. So he kind of does it because, I mean, obviously the lyrics are very emotional and the content is very important. So he's been able to put all of that together, including the beautiful shapes of the sounds that he's making. That's unusual, right?
I think to be able to convey this amount of meaning and emotion in a very short, simple song is a real gift.
Mm.
It's easy to get wound up in very long, complicated sentences when you're trying to explain something, or to feel that you need to write lots of backstory.
Right.
What this lyric does is focus on a kind of emotional landscape. Mm-hmm. It draws a picture for you of a very focused image and situation. It doesn't tell you all the backstory. You don't know who you're dealing with. You know, there are no particularly named people. You don't know what happened to them, how they got into this situation, if they'll get out of this situation. There's no kind of narrative to it.
Right.
But what you've got is this really strong focus on the feeling of it, the feeling of not being able to run and not having anywhere to go, not having a place where you belong. But then, you know, having also this response to it that you could imagine still perhaps another way to be, and that you reject the judgment that is given to you. So the simplicity of it and the intensity, it's very sharply focused. I think that's why it's so painful to listen to.
You are not kidding.
It's very, very difficult to read because it's so intense.
It is very difficult to listen to. I want to ask you also, rotting in hell, it's putrid. There is no escape. There is no redeeming qualities to being rotting in hell. What do you think of that?
What it immediately made me think of is the whole kind of paradigm of hell in a religious context. Mm-hmm. Because if you're burning in hell, there is still a chance that you are experiencing purgatory, and that you will be, therefore, once you've suffered enough, able to get out.
Right.
But if you're rotting in hell, then the implication is that you are beyond redemption, that there would be no quantity of purgatory that would allow you to make amendment for your sins, I suppose. So that's what it would imply to me, that obviously, you know, this is a religious paradigm we're talking about, since we're talking about hell. And within that paradigm, fire in and of itself, yes, might mean that you can get out, but those who rot in hell are unredeemable.
That's awful, isn't it? Do you think that he may have used this line because it may be something someone actually said to him? Obviously we're speculating, but I was wondering if it would be something someone said to him that really went in.
Well, he has told that story, hasn't he, where he was getting abuse of some similar sort to this, and his father said to him, don't worry, we're Jewish, we don't believe in hell.
Right.
So I imagine that those kinds of insults have certainly been directed at him. Without him saying one way or the other, you can never know what actually makes a writer write a particular word, unless they tell you. I think, however, that the mark of a good writer is that they produce words that are full of possibility, that are open to lots of readings, that people can get a lot out of.
Right.
And so the fact that we can read more into that is the mark of, useful, helpful writing.
Because I felt kind of the same way about Everywhere We Go, We're Looking for the Sun. When I first heard it, my immediate thought was, to me, Adam is like the sun. He brings happiness and joy and things to so many people. And so when I first heard that line, actually at the show, and it really, really hit me very hard, because to me it felt like he was saying, we're looking for acceptance. Everywhere we go, we're looking for acceptance and the light of the sun. Would you agree with that?
I think that's absolutely an interpretation you can make of that line. He obviously himself said that this song is about acceptance and the lack of it and looking for it. So definitely.
Right.
I'm interested though, because what I thought when I read that was instantly the sun is home for him.
Right.
He grew up in Southern California, where it's very hot and very sunny, and the idea of him looking for the sun and not being able to find it is for me a very strong image of him not being able to go home.
Oh, really? That's a hard one. Yes. That happens to some of us.
Yeah.
I hadn't thought of it like that.
It's a horrible idea, isn't it? Not being able to get back to the sun.
Oh, no wonder the song is so painful. Some of the fans, and one fan in particular, mentioned this. When he says, we'll rot in hell, when he sings that word, hell, he could have screamed it. He could have had an emotional outburst about it. But he didn't. It's very gentle. They didn't say this, but to me it's almost as though he's asking, you'll say we'll rot in hell? Well, I don't think we will. And in another way, it almost feels to me as though he's already forgiven the people who said that to him because of the way that he sings it. It's so gentle, so poignant. It's not angry, it's not bitter, it's not riling against the world at all. Do you think
the whole
that?
song is definitely a peaceful response to hatred.
Right.
It's not in any way aggressive. It's not in any way angry or coming up with a fighting response. It merely very calmly and quietly says, we are who we are, and I don't think that's right, that you should feel that way about it. Right. And that's it.
Yes.
It's not being a walkover or in any way lying down and giving up, but it is refusing to meet hatred with hatred, and instead it is giving you this very poignant response, which is food for thought, which is an invitation to people who perhaps are having knee-jerk reactions or just blindly believing things that they've been told all their life, to think again and to see people like Adam as wonderful human beings just like everybody else.
Right.
That's as far as it goes.
Yes. Do you think it also has a universal message? Obviously he's written it because he's gay. But I get the feeling that not only gay people would be able to relate to it. I think that people who are maybe from different cultures or people who don't have acceptance for who they are can also relate to it. Do you think that?
With any good song, again, there is that space for it to mean more than its own small immediate space. We talked a little bit about this last time, that it gives you a good song allows different people to inhabit it and appropriate it and take it to mean what they need and want it to mean.
Right.
And I think this song is wide open for other people who are in relationships which are for some reason or another frowned on by others to relate to and to find it as an expression of their situation. The only other song I can think of offhand which does that is Beyond the Barricades, Spandau Ballet, which was really about, if I remember rightly, the situation in the north of Ireland. But that was a sort of modern star-crossed lovers, Romeo and Juliet situation, but put in that very modern political context.
Right.
But I guess that you could probably put Outlaws of Love in most of those kind of situations and it would work. I think certainly probably in most religious conflicts you could probably even get the rotting in hell bit in.
Yes.
People are that extreme about religious disagreements.
That's true.
So, yeah, I think there's a lot of scope in it for people to read it on a much wider basis. On the other hand, I love the fact that it's actually taking an existing trope that's been done in very much a heterosexual way and rewriting it. Because, of course, the other song called Outlaws of Love is a Bon Jovi song, which is about a boy and a girl, and in that instance I think they run away because they're underage. So they run away to get married underage, and they're struggling to get along just to keep body and soul together.
Right.
And everybody thinks that they're too young and they don't understand, but they don't know how it feels for the two of them. Which is, you know, a sweet little song, and powerful enough, I suppose, in its own way. And I'm not dissing Bon Jovi at all, people, honestly. And it's interesting in that song because in the last verse he says, I hope we can, words to the effect of, I hope we can look back over this, you know, over a beer when we grow old and laugh.
Right.
So that song has the whole idea of, okay, we're outlaws at the moment, but actually, you know, we will get through this and we will stay together and we will grow old happily.
Right, yes.
So it does have that kind of promise because it's in the straight narrative. So it's the traditional happy ending, whereas Adam's Outlaws of Love is a very different kind of proposition because the kinds of situations in which that love would be illegal are not going to change because you've grown up a couple of years. You know, that situation is not going to change. Something quite a few songwriters have done who are quite keyed into their own content, you know, like to pick up existing songs or existing ideas and do something a little bit different with them.
So do you think that Adam would have done that as well, deliberately?
I expect that when you're coming up with an idea and you're coming up with a song title, you probably have a look around at the music that's already in existence, and you see what's out there, and you make sure that you're not getting too close. The other nice connection that I thought of with this idea of being Outlaws of Love is the whole idea of outlaw country, the subgenre of country music.
Right.
Which is, you know, at once a lovely connection for Adam because, of course, it's very strongly connected with Johnny Cash.
Right.
So it's also the rock and roll kind of branch of country, I suppose. So that's another nice connection. But also, of course, country, wonderful music though it may be, has been traditionally quite slow to move away from stereotypical ideas about straightness and gayness.
Right.
So the idea that you could kind of appropriate a little bit of this and turn it into a song that hopefully will make people think again about what it's like to be outlawed for your sexuality. That's a really nice touch.
Right, yes. I hadn't thought of it actually like that. Interesting.
The ballad that springs to mind is The Ballad of Reading Gaol by Oscar Wilde.
Right.
Written after he had been imprisoned for homosexuality, which would make some very interesting connections to the content of this song. The thing about this poem is it was written after Oscar Wilde had got out of prison again after being imprisoned for homosexuality. And the poem is about somebody who was in the jail under sentence of death.
Right.
And what it was like looking at this person who was going to die and seeing him in the days that led up to his death. And a kind of reaction to that reflects how Oscar Wilde felt about himself and also how he felt about the penal system and what that did to the men who also had to inflict the punishment. The bit that most immediately connects to Outlaws is really his use of the idea of being outcast for what's being done wrong. So he writes, "A prison wall was round us both, two outcast men were we. The world had thrust us from its heart, and God from out his care, and the iron gin that waits for sin had caught us in its snare." So So he has this fellow feeling that both he and this person who's been actually sentenced to death are outcast from the world and outcast from God. He says, "We were as men who through a fen of filthy darkness grope. We did not dare to breathe a prayer or give our anguish scope. Something was dead in each of us, and what was dead was hope." So there is this strong sense in it of being outcast, of being hopeless, of being beyond society, and of society not being willing to accept you or find a way back in for you, which was very much Oscar Wilde's experience. And there was no way back for him after his imprisonment. That was it. The other thing that I thought about was just this idea of sort of rotting. It's not the same image, but he talks about how after he's been hung, this criminal is not simply buried, but he's put in a pit with lime. This is what they did to criminals, which eats away the flesh and the bone, to make sure there's absolutely nothing left of a criminal. There's no bones left. There's no body left. There is nothing left. That person is completely destroyed. And the verse that goes like this: "And all the while the burning lime eats flesh and bone away. It eats the brittle bone by night and the soft flesh by the day. It eats the flesh and bones by turns, but it eats the heart alway."
Oh my Lord.
It's a really unpleasant image, isn't it? Very powerful, very nasty. An actual factual event. This is what really happened to criminals who received the death penalty, but it's sort of taken and made into this profoundly unpleasant image of despair and complete destroying of the mortal body. The idea of being outcast comes back again later on. He says of the dead man who's died, "Yet all is well, he has but passed to life's appointed bourne, and alien tears will fill for him pity's long broken urn. For his mourners be outcast men, and outcasts always mourn." So that's kind of his take on being outcast and what it feels like. He has a section towards the end then when he actually talks about the process of lawmaking. And what making and imposing laws on man actually does, both to the people who are punished and to the people who have to inflict that punishment. He says that every law that men have made for man since first man took his brother's life and the sad world began, but straws the wheat and saves the chaff with a most evil fan. So he says that instead of this traditional image of winnowing corn, where you get rid of the chaff, you beat the grain, you get rid of the chaff, and you save the wheat, he says that every law that man's made for man does the opposite. It actually takes the wheat out and it saves the chaff, it saves the bit that should be thrown away, that law is in fact an unhelpful thing, that men do not make good laws. He goes on, "This too I know, and wise it were if each could know the same, that every prison that men built is built with bricks of shame, and bound with bars, lest Christ should see how men their brothers maim. With bars they blur the gracious moon, and blind the goodly sun, and they do well to hide their hell, for in it things are done that Son of God nor Son of Man ever should look upon." So he finishes off by saying that the things that are done are more shameful than the things that people are being punished for, that men maim their brothers. This idea again of blinding the sun, of blurring the moon, of cutting people off from nature and from weather and from good things, and that these are things that, even God himself couldn't look upon, because they're evil things that people do, and that the men create a hell on earth by punishing their fellow men in these ways. So it's quite a powerful, quite an angry, a very sorrowful kind of poem. And there is very definitely the idea of being sort of outside the law because of homosexuality, and that law being wrong and cruel and unnatural, and that hell is a place that men make for themselves on earth. It's not anything that God could look at. So I suppose, it has those things in common.
Yes. definitely. And so I think it's very important. And I was really pleased when you mentioned this, because I thought, okay, this might be a good angle to take, to look at that aspect of the ballad. Because, you know, before we just looked at the music and the lyrics and what that might mean and everything. We've never really put it into context until now.
That's absolutely true. I think there's a lot to be said about what it has been like, particularly, you know, for artists, in terms of, you know, people who paint and poets as well as singers and theatrical performers, and other people in the arts, what it has been like for those people, you know, throughout the last couple of 100 years, dealing with trying to express themselves when the things that they want to express are actually illegal.
Right, exactly. And remains illegal in several countries still to this day, which
Absolutely.
Is ridiculous, really.
Yeah. I remember at the beginning of John Barrowman's programme, the one he made about why he's gay, which was exploring all the gene science and hormones and all these different kind of explanations. But he started off that programme by going up to Scotland, where he was born, and realising that, you know, when he was born in Scotland, at that point, it was completely illegal to indulge in any kind of homosexual acts. So in the country he was born, at the time he was born, what he would grow into would have been completely prohibited.
It's awful, really. I mean, you know, because as straight people, I genuinely don't think we can put ourselves into what that must feel like, what that must really be like. And so in a way, I thank my lucky stars every day that I was not born gay, because I don't know if I would have been strong enough to deal with it.
I think it depends very much on the person and the circumstances, doesn't it? But I think you probably would have, because of the people I see who have. There are a lot of people who I've met who probably, if you'd asked them abstractly, wouldn't have said they were tremendously strong people, but have found ways to stand up and be themselves and live their lives despite whatever opposition they might come across. So I think you would have found a way if you had, because it would have been who you were.
Yeah, because if you look back in time, we've seemingly always been fighting some kind of prejudice against somebody somewhere along the line, you know. And so to me, it's almost like this is almost the last of that kind of legal persecution, if you see what I mean. Because, as I said, there are still countries where it's illegal to be homosexual. And to me, it makes no sense, because it denies a person their humanity, who they are. And it reminds me so much of some of the countries in Northern Africa, for example, where I have friends from who, as a result of a religion, the women are very much classed still as second-class citizens and undergo a kind of circumcision, which is unbelievable. And if you didn't know that it really happened, you almost couldn't imagine that something like that could still happen in the 21st century. But then, as you say, I mean, there are laws still to this day against homosexuality. It's equally as barbaric, I think.
Yeah, but I think, I don't want to upset anybody, but I think a religion's conviction is very often either a reason or an excuse for this kind of persecution, as it is for many other kinds of persecution.
Right.
If I could do one thing to change the world, it would be to absolutely separate out government from religion.
Yes.
I would stand up to support anybody's right to believe what they believe personally and individually. Right. They have the right to do that. But it seems to me that most of the problems in the world come from people trying to impose one religious system on set of beliefs on an entire country through a governmental system, through laws. I just don't think it's healthy. That seems to me the last thing that we need to do if we're really going to move on to a society, you know, is stop allowing law and government to be influenced by religion, and influenced by just sitting down and thinking sensibly and clearly about society and how it works and what the best things are to do so that most people can be as comfortable as they can be most of the time.
Exactly. You're right. We don't want to go down the whole religious route, because that would open a whole can of worms. I'm with you. I think that people should be allowed to believe what they believe, if it gives them peace of mind, it helps their spirit grow and makes them better people, I'm all for it. But I'm not sure that it always does.
No, I'm not sure it always does either. But yeah, I think, people have to be free to make those decisions for themselves.
Yeah.
I
agree.
You can't go into somebody's mind and do
No.
it. Okay.
No, I agree with you, but that deals with the spirituality thing, and that's one thing. But when you come to trying then to impose laws on people who they should love, who they can and can't be with, I think that's taking it far too far.
Absolutely. I mean, you can't regulate, romantic relationships between consenting adults. That's their business. It's no business of anybody else's.
Yeah. My current screensaver is a picture of Adam when he received that Equalities Award, and the CEO said something about his effect would be felt for many generations to come. And I just thought, do you know what? I think it probably will, because he's doing quite a lot. He's being very visible, and he's doing a lot to break down these kinds of barriers. I mean, even his fan base, if you think about it. I read somewhere that his fan base, the majority of his fan base is women between the ages of 35 to 55. That's his core fan base. Whether that's true or not, I don't know, but that's what I read. I mean, I'm sure he has fans on either side, because I've met those too. But if that's true, and they're straight women, if that's true, then I'm thinking that many of those people wouldn't necessarily come across people in the theatre world or in the creative business or even gay people on a daily basis, and may not have people like that as part of their circle of friends. And so Adam has raised issues no one has ever addressed before. And because of who he is, now you can see people are beginning to open their minds to the fact that, well, hang on a minute. This is not some weird, alien, strange thing that's going on. These are people too. They feel like we do. And they deserve to have happy, fulfilled lives. Not just in what they do, but who they're with, and a whole life like everybody else. And I think that's amazing, because he's done it in such a short space of time.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen a lot of comments sort of written on YouTube, on the fan site, all sorts of places, where people say, I used to think X, but I've completely changed my mind since I became a fan, which is amazing. What I think is really interesting is how his fan base seems to be keeping growing at the moment.
Yes.
Which is quite extraordinary, because he hasn't got any new music out. He hasn't had any new music out for a long time now.
Right.
And he's been doing more and more obviously out there sexuality-related things.
Right.
So he's been in the media for getting these awards, for supporting the Trevor Project,
right,
all these kinds of things. So he's been much more upfront about his sexuality than he was at the beginning. And yet his popularity seems to be growing. He's been, number one on Top of Follow Friday in Twitter for the last 2 weeks. I think last week he was on number one in all categories except the overall, and this week he was number one in all categories.
That's fantastic.
He was the most recommended person on Twitter, period. Which is extraordinary for somebody who, hasn't even got a new album out at the moment, hasn't even got a new single out at the moment.
Right. It's wonderful. It really is. But I have a feeling that people are getting so excited about the new music that there's like this calm before the storm, if you can call it. There's like a collective sort of getting ready to explode type thing that's coming. You can almost feel it in the air, can't you?
Yeah. I think he's currently number 2 or 3 on the most anticipated album charts. So,
I'm not surprised.
Number 3, maybe?
Who can possibly be number 1 and 2?
Things that have a definite release date.
Okay. But I think that's part of it. I think the fact that he doesn't have a release date is actually quite cool.
Yeah.
I like that.
Well, I like the idea that he'll just keep on working on it till it's right, and then it'll come out.
Yeah, me too.
Because the first one, for all its joys, did feel a bit rushed, and he was very pressured working on it. So it's nice to be able to listen to the next one knowing it's what he wanted it to be,
Yeah.
rather than a time for it to be.
Right, exactly.
Thank you, Philippa, and thank you again also to all my guests today. I thoroughly enjoyed talking to you all. I trust that everyone listening to the programme enjoyed it too, and perhaps even want to tell us their views on this wonderful new song we now have in the world, Adam Lambert's Outlaws of Love. Thank you for listening to The Sound Bath. Join us again next time when we'll have more stimulating glimpses into the worlds of music and words.